So the next thing I'd like to be able to highlight, since we're now getting into the crux of being able to add these nodes into our scene graph, we've seen examples of how to add text and then the text attribute of font, and we've seen how to add a view of an image as into our scene graph. But I want to pivot into putting controls, objects, control elements into our Javafx scene graph. Because one big thing isn't just displaying passive data, just displaying images and displaying text to the user, but another big part of graphic user interfaces is being able to get input from the user into our application, and we use that using controls. So I want to look at probably the simplest control and then move on from there. And so one of the simplest controls is the hyperlink, because we do attach effectively a event listener, an action listener, onto a hyperlink. So let's take a look at that. So quick introduction here, or overview. We'll look at the introduction of a hyperlink. We'll look at some Javafx hyperlink examples. We're going to create a hyperlink. We're going to set the hyperlink text. We're going to set the hyperlink font, and we're going to set the hyperlink action. Let me jump over really quick to my IntelliJ, close out what I had before. And so here, yeah, we're going to have 3 different examples with hyperlink, but we'll look at the hyperlink example. Well, we'll look at the hyperlink change text example, and we'll look at a hyperlink font example. So as we go through the slides, we'll take a pause and actually do some live code demos. So quick introduction here is that the Javafx hyperlink control is a text that functions as a button, meaning you can configure a hyperlink to perform some action when the user clicks on it. So just like it works just like a hyperlink in a web page. And so the Javafx hyperlink element is represented by the class. Again, everything's inside of the main package, Javafx. Inside of the scene package is a control package, and the control package is going to have all the various control elements that we have access to. So the concrete control that we're going to look at in this lecture is going to be the hyperlink. So here's a screenshot how a Javafx hyperlink looks, right? Where you have a piece of text, usually it's highlighted, and then it's interactable as well. You can click on it, and an action will occur when you click on it. So let's take a look at a Javafx hyperlink example, and then we can actually take a pause and look at this in IntelliJ. But let's take a quick look on the slide. So here we're going to import our application and scene and stage and VBox, just like normal. Here we'll also, from our control package, import the hyperlink. I'll create a class that extends my application. Inside the start method, I'm going to go ahead, give my stage title. Then I'm going to create a new hyperlink that I can pass in as a string, the text that I want to display in my hyperlink, and then I can save that reference of hyperlink. Now, hyperlink is not a layout element, so if we wanted to add it to our scene graph, we have to add it to a layout component. So I'm going to create a new VBox, and I'm going to add my hyperlink into that VBox. I'm going to save that reference to VBox that now contains my hyperlink that now says, like, click me. Then I'm going to add my VBox to my scene. So I'm going to create a new scene. I'm going to pass the layout component, and then I'm going to give it like an XY width and height for my scene. And then I can set my scene to my stage, and then I'm going to tell my stage to show. Okay, so let's actually go here really quick and take a look at our actual code here. So let's jump to hyperlink. Let's take a look at the hyperlink example. The hyperlink example should be effectively what we just saw here. So here I'm going to create a hyperlink example. I'm going to import my application, my scene, my stage, my VBox, and my hyperlink. My hyperlink example is going to extend application. I'm going to have a start method. And here I'm going to create that hyperlink. And actually, I'm also on my hyperlink, I'm going to create, and we'll see this in a future slide, I'm going to set an event handler. So on an action listener where it's going to handle an event. So here I'm going to use the lambda expression. So this is my parameter, and the event delegator is going to always pass in an event when it occurs. So I have this event object, and I'm not going to use it for anything. I'm just going to do a system.out.print hyperlink clicked to illustrate, hey, I can bind actions that happen in response to an event of being clicked on, this hyperlink. Then I'm going to create this VBox. I'm going to pass my link into that VBox. That's my layout element. I'm going to add that VBox into my scene. I'm going to give my scene a width and a height. I'm going to set that scene as the stage. I'm going to tell the scene to show. So here, if I go to grab my hyperlink example here, and if we run over to our example runner, I'm going to just go into here and call the main method on my hyperlink example, or my example runner. Okay, so I'm going to go into here. I'm going to import that hyperlink example so I can actually run it from here. I'm gonna run this in IntelliJ. And we'll wait for this to go ahead and build. And oops, let me get rid of this from my, okay, let's make sure we only have the one call to main method. Okay, let's let that build out. And here we see, oh, that's our hyperlink. We see it says click me. When I hover over it, it turns into something that seems like I can interact. And when I click on it, notice here inside my console is this hyperlink clicked, which is the event handler that I set onto it. So we can see that we can actually respond. It's a control. We can actually respond to user input now. Go ahead and close that out. And let's go ahead and move back onto our slides. Okay, so if we want to create a hyperlink, in order to use a Javafx hyperlink control, you must first create a hyperlink instance. And so again, here's the sample code on how we create a hyperlink. We just invoke the constructor, and whatever text you want to pass in, you can pass in as a string. So if you want to set the hyperlink text, it's possible to change the text of a Javafx hyperlink using the set text method. So here's an example of changing the text of a Javafx hyperlink. So suppose we have the text click me, and then we can on it call the set text method and then update what the text is. And suppose we want to go ahead and set the hyperlink font. It's possible to change the font of a Javafx hyperlink via its set font method. And so we've already talked about how we can go ahead and manipulate fonts in Javafx. And if you have not seen that lecture, you can go back and watch it. It should be on inside of the YouTube playlist. And so here's just an example. We can create a new hyperlink with the text, and then we create a new font using the factory methods inside the font class. And here I'm going to use the 3-parameter font method, the factory method, using the font family, and then the boldness, the font weight, and then finally the font size. And I'm going to create a Courier new font bold 36 instance. And then I can just set my font into my link like that. And then finally, besides setting the text, being able to set the font, being able to also set the hyperlink action, which we saw just a moment ago. And so this is what will be the response when the hyperlink is clicked. So the hyperlink lets you set an action listener on the hyperlink instance. And here's an example of setting an action listener using a Lambda expression to define what the callback function will be. And so let's just go ahead and take a look at the other 2 examples that we have. So here I have the ability to change the text example. So here, inside of here, I will have a hyperlink that says click me. And then I'm going to do what we just saw in that code where it says set text to the new link text. And that's going to be the one change. We're going to set that text. So let me grab this name here of this class. Let's go over here to our example runner. I'm going to go ahead and use that new class, which I will now import. Let's import that class so I can run it. And then let's go ahead and run this. And we're going to let this build out, and then it'll launch my GUI application. And so what I should have is that one line of code that changes. So instead of it saying click me, it now says new link text. So we can see how that works. And then finally, let's look at the hyperlink Hyperlink Font Example. And here, what we're going to do is what we just saw in the slides, where we're going to create a font, save that reference to the font, and then we'll set that to our link. So let me again just grab this here, Hyperlink Font Example. Let me run to this example runner. I will go ahead and paste that in here. Let's go ahead and import that. Excellent. And then let's go ahead and run this. And then here we'll see that we have they've clicked me in using this new font. And again, every time I click on it, it's going to use that action listener to go ahead and invoke that callback function. That's just going to print to the console hyperlink clicked. And let's go back to our slides. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in terms of the hyperlink example, or the hyperlink control.